You've heard about cardiovascular health, you've heard about brain health, but what about muscle health? This is a topic that often gets overlooked in terms of exercise, even though we know that we are using our muscles when we're exercising. On today's episode of the Exercise is Health podcast, Julie and I explore this topic of muscle health and 3 things that you can start doing during your workouts and during your week to help promote the health and function of your muscles. We're going to cue the intro song and then we're going to dive right into this conversation. Welcome to the Exercise is Health podcast, where we're talking about exercise, health, and the interconnectedness of the two. We are your hosts, Charlie
and Julie,
and we will be coming to you every single week from our studio, Muscle Activation Schaumburg. Hey, welcome back, everybody, to the Exercise is Health podcast. We are your hosts, Charlie
and Julie,
and we're coming to you from our studio, Muscle Activation Schaumburg in Schaumburg, Illinois. Now, at Muscle Activation Schaumburg, we believe your health is your most valuable asset, and the single best thing that you can do to both boost and protect this asset is exercise. Specifically, exercise is geared towards improving the health and function of your muscles. Now, today we are going to be exploring this topic of muscle health and how exercise can help promote muscle health. But if this is something that you want the practical application of beyond what we're talking about today, then you need to check out the MAS Home Workouts bundle. This bundle of workouts can be done in under 25 minutes from the comfort of your own home using minimal equipment. And best of all, it includes resistance training, cardio workouts, mobility workshops, and recovery days to make sure that you stay feeling well and can continue to exercise on a consistent basis. To learn more about the MAS Home Workouts bundle, go to homeworkout.matschaumburg.com. So today we're talking about muscle health. We are talking about how exercise can help promote muscle health and things that you can start doing with your workouts and throughout your week to promote the health and function of your muscles. Because so often the health and function of our muscles is completely overlooked until it's too late, until we have chronically achy muscles, chronically tight muscles. We have these weird pains that we can't explain, and then we try everything else, and then we realize, oh wait, maybe it's our muscles that are contributing to this. So we want to explore this conversation and give you some practical application tips to help promote the health and function of your muscles, because doing so will not only extend the longevity of your ability to exercise, but extend the longevity of your ability to do whatever it is in life that you want to do.
Charlie, you're absolutely right, where we rarely talk about how to keep muscles healthy. In fact, before I got into this field, I didn't even think that muscles were something that needed to be kept healthy. I kind of thought muscles are there, we're going to use them, they make us move around, we can use them to work out, but that's pretty much it. And every morning I'll just wake up and they're just ready to go. They're ready to work, and I didn't know there was things to do to keep them healthy. I think the first conversation, and a brief conversation that we should have, because we want to really get into the application of how to keep muscles healthy, but is what are signs of healthy muscle and what are signs of not healthy muscle? I think the easiest way to relate to you guys, because Charlie and I used to be in your shoes where it was like, wait a second, we have to keep muscles healthy. Signs that muscles aren't doing well are what Charlie just listed out, which were chronically tight muscles, chronically achy muscles, muscles that constantly have the zingy motion, or muscles that you have to constantly ice, or muscles that constantly get sprained and strained. Those are signs that muscles are not working well, or that we're not taking good care of our muscles. Those are signs actually that a muscle needs rest and needs to repair and recover. And so what's so convoluted about this is currently in the fitness industry, this kind of result from a workout, like, oh, if you work out and you get sore after, you did a good job. That means you did some muscle damage, it's going to repair. This is why this conversation never comes up, because our way of building muscle and getting muscle stronger is actually a form of muscle damage. And that is a different story than what can we do to keep muscles healthy. Now, we've done many podcasts on how to build muscle strength, how to build muscle size, but today we're going to be talking about muscle health, which is going to be different than the stories you've heard about what to do in the gym to build muscle, to work out, to lose weight, and that train of thought. Again, today we're hoping to teach you what things can you do to continue to encourage the health and function of your muscles.
Yeah, what's challenging about this topic overall is kind of like you were saying, Julie, unless the symptom is experienced right in the muscle themselves, we don't necessarily think like, oh, it might be a muscle issue. But there are a lot of things that can come up from a symptom perspective that can absolutely be contributed to by muscle issues and by lack of health of the muscles, whether it's something like tendinitis, different fasciitis, different, ligament or disc issues, joint issues. I mean, how many times do we have people coming in saying, well, I don't know if it's a muscle issue because it's my joint, where the symptom is. And say, well, actually, that can be a sign that for an extended period of time, your muscles have not been super healthy or have not been functioning well enough to kind of tolerate your daily life. I also like that you brought up the idea of how we typically see a quote unquote good workout in today's mainstream fitness industry. Well, not being able to tolerate your workouts or feeling excessively achy, beat up, sore, lethargic after your workouts, those can be signs that, one, how you're exercising is inappropriate for your body, but two, the health of your muscles may really not be up to par or up as high as you would like it to be to be able to do the things in life that you want to do. And it's not just working out either. Let's say it's getting up off the floor after playing with your kids or grandkids or doing work around the yard, or there's that one activity where you're just like, oh wow, it just really zaps it out of me. That may be an indication that your muscles are not as healthy as you would like them to be. So these tips that we're going to give you, yes, we are talking in terms of exercise. We're speaking through that lens, but understand that there is a much wider application for this information than just say making your workouts better or making sure that you're not as achy and beat up and sore after your workouts as you currently are.
Before we jump into these tips, I want to talk about some of the functions of muscles, because if we're going to keep them healthy, we need to know what are they doing that we need to keep healthy. And part of keeping muscles healthy is making sure that they're functioning appropriately. So a muscle does one action, and that is to contract when it's asked to contract by the nervous system, and to stop contracting when it is stopped being asked to contract by the nervous system. Some really cool things that muscles do when they contract and relax is they control joints. And what joints allow us to do is they allow us to move. So when muscles are functioning appropriately and functioning and are healthy, it allows our joints to move the best that they can move given a joint's structure. So obviously every joint has like some bony stuff, right? It's where a bone meets a bone, and your genetics and the wear and tear on those joints will determine how much that joint can move. But then the muscle is responsible for making motion at that joint. We often think about muscles and movement together, and it's kind of true because muscles are the things that are going to move our joints. So when we're thinking about muscle health, we want to be thinking about how am I going to preserve the integrity of my muscle's ability to contract when it should contract, stop contracting when it shouldn't be contracting, and that will lead us down this road of motion and mobility at joints. So I wanted to start with that because muscles' jobs are really, really simple. And if we can continue to encourage them to keep doing a good job at that job, so many issues that we experience and we go down these long rabbit holes of symptoms and diagnoses and things like that, we can prevent and or help manage by just preserving the contractility of muscles.
Yes, that is huge. Preserving the ability for muscles to contract is key. Absolutely, without question. So how can we promote this during our workouts? How can you promote this when you're doing exercise in the gym, at home, wherever you're working out? Well, the first thing that we recommend you doing to help preserve and improve the health of your muscles is while you're doing an exercise, think about the muscles that you are working while you're working them. And this starts actually before you even begin the exercise. One thing we like to say is begin with the muscle in mind. So think about this kind of like revving the engine of your car. So you're not necessarily doing the exercise yet, but you are starting to contract those muscles that you are going to use for the exercise. An example can be with like a biceps curl, all right? And a biceps curl where you're bending your elbow and letting it straighten, squeezing the muscles on the front of your arms. And so if you're going to do this exercise, before you even start to do the motion of the biceps curl, you might start by just squeezing your biceps. And if you've ever kind of like flexed in the mirror or anything like that, like that's what I'm talking about with this. So before you even do the motion of the biceps curl, start to really try to make a nice connection between your brain and your muscles, a nice conscious connection there, feeling your muscles squeezing and starting to almost like flex them again, like you're flexing in the mirror. Then take that idea of that squeezing the muscles of that contraction and carry it into the exercise itself. So let's say you're holding dumbbells and before you start to bend your elbows, you're squeezing your biceps. Again, you're not moving yet, but now you maintain that squeeze and you start to tense a little bit harder. And that's when your elbows start to bend. But your focus remains on squeezing your muscles. It remains on that contraction. Remember, if you are doing an exercise and want to improve the health of your muscles, it's going to be really important to make sure you have a conscious awareness of what's going on with the muscles that you are trying to use. Otherwise, what ends up happening is we kind of become a little bit numb to what's happening with those muscles because we're focused on other things. So if you really want to use exercise to improve the health of your muscles, begin with the muscle in mind that you're wanting to use, and then maintain that focus and think about your muscles while you are working them.
Now, when you're listening to this tip that Charlie just gave you with keeping the muscle in mind and actually the forefront of your mind when you're exercising, before you dismiss that, I want to tell you the two ways that you're probably currently doing it, because I think sometimes when we think about exercise, and if you haven't really thought about exercise all that much or muscles all that much, all the details kind of get confusing because you've not really explored it in depth. So there's two ways that we see people currently lift weights. One, they are literally just lifting weights. They're thinking about moving the dumbbell or the weight stack up and down. And usually this comes with like some kind of counting thing where it's like, oh, I got to get 10 bicep curls done. And so the focus becomes on lifting the weights up and down 10 times or 12 times, whatever the reps are. So you might be in that category. The other one, which is a little bit more close to what we're talking about, is when you lift weights, but you want to be aware of what muscles are working. Meaning you're saying, well, yeah, Julie and Charlie, I do think about my muscles when I exercise. But the way that we currently see it in the gym industry is still a little bit different than what we're presenting right now. The way we currently see it is, okay, do some bicep curls. And when a muscle starts burning, that muscle that we're feeling stimulating is going to be the biceps, meaning you're doing the exercise and the side effect is feel biceps. We're not saying you should do that. Well, we're not saying that's necessarily bad. That's actually a step in the right direction. What we're saying is that before you even feel the biceps squeezing while you're doing the exercise, the goal of the exercise should be to squeeze your muscles. Not that the squeezing the muscles and sensing the muscles is a side effect of the exercise. So instead of doing bicep curls and when you start feeling the muscle, you start feeling the bicep, you're saying, I'm going to try to feel the bicep first and use that muscle squeeze to do and to accomplish these bicep curls. So it's which came first, the chicken or the egg? Which came first, the bicep curl or the bicep squeeze? We're saying put that bicep squeeze first, not second.
Yeah, that is a huge point. If you are used to exercising, if you are used to mainstream fitness, you need to pause this, go back, hit that 15-second back button a few times and re-listen to that point that Julie just brought up. Because yes, a lot of times people will talk about like feeling the burn, but it's something that comes later on, after you do 5, 6, 7 reps of an exercise. All right. What we are saying is you need to start with that. It's not something that comes as a result of the exercise. That initiates the exercise. And that is a huge shift in the mindset that it gets applied to your workout. And it will lead to a huge shift in your experience during the workouts, as well as your ability to improve the health of your muscles through your workouts. So that is a really big thing. So the second tip that we have to improve the health of your muscles is to regulate your range of motion. Now, a lot of times in the fitness industry, the term full range of motion gets thrown out, and we're not opposed at all to using as much motion as you have available and as your body can tolerate, and as much as you can actively perform. But we are a huge proponent of regulating your range of motion and not just mindlessly moving. And too often the idea of full range of motion promotes the concept of prioritizing motion and sacrificing other things in order to get that full range. And we're saying, wait a second, that is something that needs to be regulated a little bit more closely.
Let me give you the oversimplified, easiest way to remember how to regulate your range of motion. You, as the owner of your body, need to put your muscles in charge of how far you get to move. Remember how I said in the beginning, muscles contract, and when they contract, they have the opportunity to move joints? Okay, so the thing that's responsible for moving joints is your muscles. Oftentimes, what we put in charge of how far we should move is a setting on a machine, or a picture in a magazine, or a preconceived notion of how far you used to move in college, or how far your kid can move. What we need to do is constantly be asking your muscles, how far can you move today? Did you wake up achy and sore? Well, they're probably going to move less far. Did you wake up feeling awesome and free and you don't feel muscles at all? There's no symptoms going on? Well, you probably can move a little bit more. Did you do a great warm-up? Great. Your muscles can probably move a little bit more. Did you skip your warm-up? Well, your muscles are going to probably need some time before they give you more motion. So the bottom line with regulating your motion, and we're going to give you some tips on how to do this, but is going to be always giving it back to the muscles that are involved in the motion. How far can that muscle or those muscle groups or the muscles revolving around that joint, how far can they move today, right now, for this set?
So the first thing that we want you to do when you're regulating your range of motion is, one, see how the different sides of your body move relative to one another. Okay, so for example, let's say, again, you are doing a biceps curl. And when you do a biceps curl, you try to bend your elbows as much as you can, and then maybe you try to let them go as straight as they can. But you notice that maybe your right elbow doesn't go quite as straight as your left elbow. That is something to keep in mind while you're doing the exercise. Now, if you're using dumbbells and your hands can move independently, it's not necessarily as big of a deal. But if you're using, say, like a barbell where your hands don't move independently, then you need to start to regulate how far you're moving based on the side that moves less. So when your limbs don't move independently, you want to regulate how far you're moving based on the side that moves less, because you don't want to exceed what that side can do. But regardless of whether your limbs are moving independently of one another or whether they're moving together, you always have to regulate how far you're moving based on how far you can move. And I know that sounds like, well, duh, obviously, but what we see happen a lot is people start using momentum to try to move farther than they can actually control and they can actually move. And that is when excessive soreness happens. That's when you increase your risk for injury. That is when you start to feel really beat up and achy from your workouts. And that's when you can start to get those chronic pains that ultimately prevent you from working out long term. So, first thing to regulating your range of motion is to check to see how much range of motion you have, and then match the way you do your exercise to that range of motion that you can do.
Charlie just brought up using momentum to achieve more motion than what you have. Another way that we see a lot of people violating their range of motion is they use a machine setting or a preconceived position on a machine for a movement to achieve a position. So let me give you an example of this because it looks a lot different than the example that Charlie gave with the bicep curl. Have you guys ever seen a pull-down machine? The question is, and I don't know if you've ever questioned this, but you should be now that you're listening to this podcast, what degree should you put your shoulders at? So a lot of people will sit down on the pull-down machine and they'll reach up to the bar, and wherever that bar takes their shoulders, that's where they'll do the exercise. But have you ever questioned, well, should my arms really be at 180 degrees relative to my body, meaning my arms are going right up next to my ears? Or should they be in some degree in front of my ears? What we recommend doing is not going by wherever the machine is going to pull your shoulders, but rather go where your body will allow your shoulders to go. The way you can do this is before sitting down on the machine, don't let your back arch, but take both arms and slowly take them in front of you, almost like you're doing like a rainbow arcing motion in front of your body, and see how high up your arms can go before you have to arch your spine. A lot of people cannot achieve 180 degrees, meaning a lot of people cannot get their arms straight up and down from their body. I think normally I have maybe 145 degrees, 160 degrees, somewhere in there. So it's some degree in front of my body. And so when I sit down on the pull down machine, instead of forcing my shoulders to go to 180 degrees, which is again right above my head, right up and down from my body, one straight line, I already proved to myself that my shoulders cannot do that. So I don't want to force my shoulders to do that. I'm actually going to lean back away from the machine so that I can stay at that 145 degrees, 160 degrees, wherever I could achieve without the forcefulness or without the passive input from the machine. And that will be a much better way to respect and allow my muscles to manage my full range of motion rather than a random machine or a picture of an exercise to manage my motion.
And then to wrap up with the idea of regulating range of motion, the last thing we recommend you adding into your workouts is moving slowly while you're doing the exercise. Moving slowly will help to eliminate the momentum that we often see people using while they're doing the workouts, but it will also help you to make a better connection with your muscles while you're doing the exercise. And what that's going to allow for is when you're able to connect with your muscles, you are able to feel when your muscles stop squeezing as much and when your joints stop moving as much, and you can use your internal cues to tell you when to stop moving as opposed to the external cues of, did I get the bar all the way to my chest? Did my arms reach up all the way overhead? And looking at things, using the mirror or using the machine to tell you how far to move. So moving slowly will not only help you to connect better with your muscles, but it will also help you to regulate your motion as well.
All right, so far we've given you 2 kick booty tips. The first one being put your muscle in your mind first. Remember the chicken or the egg muscle before the exercise. The second one is going to be manage your range of motion and all the tips that will help you manage your range of motion. But the third one is going to be invest in muscle maintenance. Now, I need to be honest because Charlie and I are completely biased in that we're going to talk a lot about what we do here at Muscle Activation Schaumburg, which is muscle activation techniques. A lot of times when people think about maintaining muscles, they actually are thinking about downregulating symptoms that muscles give your body. And when I say that, you might be thinking, well, of course, if I have a tight muscle, I should do something to relieve that tight muscle. If I have an achy muscle, I should do something to relieve that achy muscle. And Charlie and I have muscles and we experience tight and achy muscles sometimes, and we totally understand your strong desire to get rid of those sensations because they are not fun at all. But they are also the only way that your body can tell you that something is not good. Something is not going well in that muscle. And so it's going to tell you in the way that it can tell you. So a lot of times we spend time, again, silencing these communication signals that our body's giving us, whether that is doing something to get that muscle to relax, getting something to get that muscle to downregulate. But what MAT does is it always asks the question, why? Well, why is this muscle screaming at us? Why is this muscle tight and not ever relaxing? And remember, one of the signs of a healthy muscle is that it contracts when it's supposed to and stops contracting when it's not supposed to. So we like to use MAT to keep up the health and function of muscle tissue, because instead of silencing the communication that a muscle is trying to send to your brain to tell it usually that something is not going well by being painful or achy or sore or tight, MAT asks the question, well, why is that muscle not functioning the way it should be? And why is it telling your brain something is not going well here?
Yeah, when it comes to improving the health of your muscles, MAT really takes the cake in our opinion. And like Julie was saying, your muscles are designed to contract. And the whole goal of MAT is to figure out where you have muscles that aren't contracting well and get those muscles working better. So by investing in something like maintaining your muscle system with muscle activation techniques, not only will you be answering those questions of, okay, why do I have these achy, tight, sore muscles, but you will also be helping muscles do their job better, which is contract, which means, like Julie was saying earlier, your joints will get to move better. You will have greater strength, greater output. Your joints will actually be better protected, and you will be able to do more with your workouts and do more in life because your muscles are working better. So for us, MAT is a fundamental aspect of maintaining and improving the health and function of our muscles. And that is why MAT is such a critical aspect to every single thing that we do here at Muscle Activation Schaumburg. So when you think about improving your health, you might think about improving the health of your heart, improving the health of your brain. Shoot, you might even think about like improving the health of your teeth or the health of your eyes. But what about the health of your muscles? There are some very simple things that you can start doing now with your workouts to improve the health of your muscles, to make sure that you are able to consistently exercise and continue to get all the health boosting benefits from exercise, as well as be able to do all the things in life that bring you joy for as long as you want to do them. So who do you know that needs to hear this episode? Who do you know that is complaining of different muscle related issues, or is thinking that exercise is only about heart health or improving the health of their brain? Share this episode with them so they can understand the importance of maintaining the health of their muscles and some things that they can start doing with their workouts to do just that. And while you're online, if you wouldn't mind, head on over to iTunes and leave us a rating and review. It helps people. Actually, I think it's technically called Apple Podcasts now. So go over to Apple Podcasts, leave us a rating and review, or Spotify. You can find us there as well, because it helps people find this episode when they're looking for information on exercise and when they're looking for information on health. So if you found value in this conversation today, let us know by leaving us a 5-star rating and review. Well, thanks so much for tuning in. We always appreciate it. Have a fantastic week, and we'll talk with you all next week. Hey there, it's Charlie again. One last thing. I want to let you in on a secret project that I've been working on for quite some time now. I am planning on releasing a book by the middle of summer 2021. But here's the thing, because I'm self-publishing this book, there's only going to be a limited number of copies available at any given time. So to learn more about this book and to be one of the first to find out when this book actually gets released, what I need you to do is go to exerciseforlifemethod.com. There you'll find out more information as well as some exclusive bonuses that I'm offering just for simply staying in the loop with what's going on with this book. So to learn more and claim your bonuses, go to exerciseforlifemethod.com, enter in your information, and you'll be automatically kept up to date. Learn all about the book and bonuses at exerciseforlifemethod.com. This podcast is for information purposes only. The statements and views on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Julie and Charlie Cates, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse effects from the use of information contained herein. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guest qualifications or credibility. This podcast may contain paid endorsements or advertisements for products or services. Individuals on this podcast may have a direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein. If you think you have a medical issue, consult a licensed physician.